This recipe is not a traditional bibimbap because it doesn't include some of the traditional bibimbap vegetables like spinach and carrots, and instead we are working with spring vegetables. But the recipe is still really great because you can choose kind of whatever spring vegetables you have lying around. Anything that's tender and green and fresh will work really well here, so it's a nice way to use up what you have. So bibimbap is sometimes made in a Korean stoneware pot that makes the rice super crispy. I don't have a stoneware pot, so today we're kind of going to replicate that by doing a really great technique on the stove, which is just crisping pre-cooked rice in a non-stick skillet with plenty of oil so that the starches in that rice get super brown and crunchy. Calls for 8 ounces of snow peas, which are kind of those like sheer thin peas where you can see each pea in the pod. I only could find snap peas, so that's what we're going to use, but I'm going to cut them a little smaller. In this recipe, you can use really any quick cooking, tender, high moisture spring vegetable you want. It could be asparagus, it could be fresh peas if you don't have frozen. Just make sure that they're all cut around the same size so that they cook at the same rate. The thing about a snap pea is it has a really tough fiber that runs from the top to the bottom that is not super pleasant to eat. So what you want to do is you can either use your fingers and just like snap. You could trim each end and then use your nail to kind of remove the fiber and compost that. Or the faster but a little bit, harder way to do it is to make a slit, not all the way through, and then use it as a handle and pull in both directions, and you get your fiber out. So I'm just going to do that with all of my snap peas, and then I'm going to cut them into bite-sized pieces. So to get these cool diagonal pieces of snap pea, you just want to cut diagonally across, which seems a little counterintuitive, but then you get these cool triangular shapes. I'm going to thinly slice these Persian cucumbers. Persian cucumbers are smaller and less watery than English hothouse cucumbers, and they're a little more flavorful and a little crunchier, which is why I prefer them. But if you can only find an English cucumber, that's fine, but you just only need one of them. So I'm just gonna slice into thin rounds, and then we are just going to salt these and season them with vinegar so that they're seasoned and flavorful instead of just sort of water. So now I'm gonna add a big pinch of salt, maybe just 2, to the cucumbers, mix them around, and then use my clean hand to just kind of massage them. The salt is going to draw out the moisture from the cucumbers, which will make them both crunchier and more flavorful. Osmosis, it's a miracle. And as you can feel the cucumbers kind of yielding and you're not worried about just kind of like smushing them, you can go a little bit harder and be more aggressive. It's also okay if some of them get a little bit smushed. And then once you've expelled some liquid, just pour off any excess, and then we're gonna season this with unseasoned rice vinegar. At this point, if you wanna add a pinch of sugar or a little bit of honey to make your pickles slightly sweeter, that's also totally fair. You're good. I sliced 4 scallions, which was too boring to film, and now I'm going to just sizzle them in a little bit of canola oil. You can use any neutral oil here, and 2 teaspoons of toasted sesame oil, and then I'm going to mix it with our already cooked rice. And the reason why the scallions need to cook on their own is because if you mix them straight into the rice, they're going to be raw and not quite as flavorful or developed. So that's why we're just gonna cook them first. And then instead of pouring the rice in the pan, I find that it's actually a lot easier to transfer the scallions to a bowl and then mix the rice into that bowl. It means that the rice is much better coated in the oil and that it doesn't fly everywhere during this stage. While our oil is heating up, I'm going to talk a little bit about the rice. This is 4 cups of short grain brown rice. You can use short grain white rice if you prefer it. Short grain is great here because it's starchy, and so it'll get nice and crispy, crispier than a long grain rice. If long grain is all you have, it will still be delicious. It might not be as chewy and crispy. You can also get extra rice if you're ordering takeout these days. You can just order extra rice and it's great here. It is important that it's completely chilled because that gives the starches a chance to solidify. So here we're just looking for the scallions to take on a bit of color and get totally soft. And then we're gonna pour them out and mix them with the rice. And I also saved a handful of them for garnishing, and I made sure to cut them on an extreme bias because I miss working with Sola, and I know that's what you would do. Another great thing about cooking the scallions out before we mix them with the rice is that they'll give the oil all their yummy scallion flavor, and that means your rice will be even extra delicious. What happens to rice when all the starches kind of clump up? I'm gonna break it up with my clean hand before the scallion oil goes in, just to make sure that everything is evenly coated. And this is why I like to do it in a bowl, because if you dump that rice straight into the skillet, it's hard to get everything easily coated. The scallions are brown, starting to brown at least, and now I'm just gonna pour all of that scallion oil into my rice and season it with a fair amount of salt, 1.5 teaspoons of diamond salt, and then I'm gonna return it to the skillet with a little more oil and cook it until it gets really crispy on the bottom. That's it. That's it. The scallions are brown, starting to brown at least, and now I'm just gonna pour all of that scallion oil into my rice and season it with a fair amount of salt, 1.5 teaspoons of diamond salt, and then I'm gonna return it to the skillet with a little more oil and cook it until it gets really crispy on the bottom. That's it. That's it. Now that the rice has been mixed with all of the scallions and seasoned with salt, we are going to return it to the skillet with another bit of oil. It's a tablespoon, about a tablespoon of oil. A nonstick skillet is great here. If you don't have one, a cast iron skillet will work really well. You do want to make sure it's like a nicely seasoned cast iron, or you could get some sticking issues. So once our oil is hot, and we'll know that because it will start to glisten and kind of shimmer across the pan, we will add this. We're going to press it down so that there's as much surface contact as possible, and then we're going to just let it cook at medium-high for about 7 or 8 minutes until the bottom is crispy. I can smell it, and I'm starting to see it like shimmer and glisten. So now I'm going to transfer the rice into the pan, and then just use my spatula to compact it. You can use a smaller skillet. Obviously, the bigger skillet that you have, the more surface area there is between the rice and the pan, so you'll get more crispy bits. But if you don't have a nonstick this big or a cast iron this big, it's fine. And some of the scallions are going to get a little dark, but they're still going to taste very good. So while the rice is crisping, I'm just mixing together the sauce that's going to season everything. It is a mixture of gochujang, which is the Korean fermented red pepper sauce, soy sauce, toasted sesame oil, honey, rice vinegar unseasoned, and then taste it and see if you want to add a little bit of water to make it a little bit less spicy. You also could add a little more vinegar, or really anything that you want to make it something that tastes great to you. So it's been about 7 minutes, and I'm just going to turn over the rice to see that it's so crispy on the bottom. Okay, so this is done. I'm going to take it off the heat. And this recipe we developed for one skillet. So that means that if you only have one skillet, what we're going to do is we're going to serve the rice now, and we're just going to, let it cool down a little bit. It's going to be fine. The rest of the process takes about 5 minutes. If you have more than one skillet, by all means, you can just leave the rice in here and cook your vegetables and eggs in a separate skillet. The rice is out of the skillet and in serving bowls. And now I'm just going to quickly cook the vegetables. And this is kind of, a mixture of steaming and sauteing, because we're going to cook them first for a little while just to get some color on them. And then we're going to add water and cook the water off so they'll kind of steam or blanch. Okay. So now I'm just going to add some water, which is going to be very loud. It's going to help them cook more evenly. In about 2 to 3 minutes, everything's going to be super bright green, and I'm just going to transfer it to the same bowl that my rice was in, season it with salt, and then we're almost done. The only thing that's left is to fry the eggs. Okay, the last thing that we're going to do is fry some eggs. I'm only going to fry 2 eggs because there are only 2 of us, and we each only want 1 egg, and 1 plus 1 is 2. But you have as many eggs as you want. Also, you don't have to fry them. You could boil them. You could poach them. You could use tofu or, you know, sauteed shrimp instead. But I like eggs, so that's what I'm going to do. Okay, so I'm just heating enough oil to kind of coat the bottom of the nonstick pan, though nonstick pans, you know, the oil just kind of, it goes wherever it wants. And when it's hot, I'm going to crack in the eggs. And then, after about a minute, I learned this trick from Lucas Volger. I am going to put a little bit of soy sauce on the egg, which gives it a great flavor. Done. Ooh. Oh God. Okay. Looking good. So I'm going to put about a teaspoon on each egg. And I'm going to try not to get it too much on the pan just because it does caramelize. And then for the next minute, ooh, there we go, move back. I'm just gonna move the oil around to try to get it on top of the egg. So here we are. We have our crispy rice and our soy fried egg and our beautiful vegetables. And now all we're going to do is assemble. So I'm just gonna put piles of everything around the rice, and then before I eat it, drizzle it with the dressing and mix it all together so that you have a lovely rice, vegetable, saucy egg dish. So this recipe also calls for sprouts or shoots or something like baby spinach or baby arugula or just something fresh and vegetal to chew on. I don't have any of that, so I'm just gonna add some extra pickles, which I already had in the fridge, and some sliced chives, which I'm trying to use up. The point is that it's okay if you don't have every single ingredient. It's mostly about having a variety so that you're getting a lot of different textures and flavors.